Hello. I've always believed that marriage was a commitment built on trust, respect, and shared dreams. But when my world came crashing down, I realized I had been building my life on quicksand. My name's Brian, I'm 36, and this is the story of how my life changed forever on a night I thought would be just another social gathering. It all started when my wife, Chloe, 34, got invited to an upscale party hosted by her old college friend, Jess. Chloe was ecstatic, and I was happy to see her so excited. It wasn't unusual for her to go out with friends. I always trusted her and encouraged her to have a life outside of our marriage. Besides, the invite seemed like a harmless networking opportunity for her growing event planning business. I decided to skip this one since it was a girls' night out kind of deal. That Friday evening, Chloe spent hours getting ready. She twirled in front of the mirror in a sleek red dress, her excitement almost contagious. She kissed me goodbye, leaving a trace of her perfume behind. I didn't know that the faint scent would soon be something I'd hate. Around 10 p.m., I received a text from a buddy, Jared, who works security for upscale events. He told me he spotted Chloe at the party, not unusual since I knew where she was. But his next text froze me. Dude, she's being really friendly with some guys here. Thought you'd want to know. Friendly? I brushed it off, trying not to overthink. Chloe's always been social, but as the minutes passed, I couldn't shake a growing unease. Jared's texts got more specific. Apparently, Chloe wasn't just talking. There were rumors about her sneaking off with different men to private areas. My heart sank. This wasn't the woman I knew. Or was it? Unable to sit still, I decided to drive to the venue. I told myself I just needed to see for myself, hoping Jared's concerns were exaggerated. The party was loud, full of laughter and music, with clusters of well-dressed people sipping cocktails. As I walked in, I felt out of place in my casual jeans and jacket, but my focus wasn't on blending in. It was on finding Chloe. It didn't take long. She was in the middle of the dance floor, sandwiched between two men, laughing and swaying as if she didn't have a care in the world. I froze, anger and disbelief pooling in my stomach. I couldn't unsee the way they touched her or the way she leaned into it, completely absorbed. My hands clenched into fists, but I stayed rooted, unable to believe this was happening. Then, she slipped away with one of the men into a side hallway. My feet moved before my brain caught up. I followed, heart pounding as I braced myself for what I might find. When I turned the corner, the sight hit me like a freight train. Chloe wasn't just flirting anymore. She was fully engaged with the man, her wedding ring glinting mockingly under the hallway's dim light. That was just the beginning of the unraveling. I found out later, through Jared, overheard whispers, and eventually Chloe herself, that this wasn't a one-off mistake. There were several men involved at the party that night, and this pattern of reckless behavior had been going on for months. She admitted it the next morning, teary-eyed and apologetic, but her words rang hollow. The marriage certificate we had framed on our wall became a symbol of betrayal instead of unity. I tore it up in anger, an act that felt both liberating and heartbreaking. At that moment, the relationship we built over 8 years crumbled like paper in my hands. The morning after the party, Chloe sat at our kitchen table, still wearing the remnants of the makeup she'd so carefully applied the night before. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks, and her red dress, the same one that had caught every man's attention, hung limp on her frame. She looked like she wanted to say something, but I beat her to it. Was it worth it? I asked, my voice hoarse from a sleepless night. I hadn't been able to stop replaying what I'd seen. The betrayal seared into my memory. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then the excuses poured out. I was drunk. It didn't mean anything. And you weren't supposed to find out? That last one stung the most. Not because it was unexpected, but because it confirmed the truth. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. I trusted you, I said, cutting her off mid-sentence. Do you have any idea what you've done? The next few days were a blur of confusion, anger, and avoidance. I couldn't bring myself to be in the same room as her. I stayed at a motel one night, drove aimlessly another. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw her with those men, her laughter ringing out like a taunt. She tried calling, texting, even writing me a letter. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. Her actions had already written the story of who she'd become. At work, I was a shadow of myself. My coworkers noticed, of course, but I brushed off their concern with vague excuses about being tired. In reality, I was trying to hold myself together long enough to figure out what to do next. A week later, we finally sat down for a real conversation, or what passed for one. She begged me to let her explain. It was just a phase, she claimed, her voice trembling. I got caught up in the excitement, the attention. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to hurt me? I repeated, my voice rising. You didn't think about me at all. You didn't think about our marriage, our promises, any of it. Her tears came then, a torrent of apologies and promises that things would change. But they felt as empty as the space between us. The woman I'd married was a stranger now, and I didn't know if I wanted to try to find her again, or if she was even worth finding. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the unraveling of everything we'd built. I couldn't stop thinking about the vacations we'd taken, the holidays we'd spent with family, the mundane yet meaningful rituals that made up our life together. Every memory was now tinged with suspicion. Was she thinking about someone else during those moments? Was I always the last one in her mind? I began to gather evidence, emails, texts, even the blurry videos Jared had managed to snag from the party's security cameras. Part of me wanted to confront her with everything, to make her squirm under the weight of her lies. But another part of me, the part that still loved her despite it all, wanted to believe her excuses, however feeble. The day I tore up our marriage certificate felt like the first step toward reclaiming some control. It was dramatic, yes, but it was also cathartic. That piece of paper had represented a bond that Chloe had shattered. There was no point in holding on to a lie. But even as I shredded the document, I felt a pang of sadness. I didn't just lose my wife that night. I lost the future we planned together, the house we dreamed of buying, the kids we talked about having, the retirement trips we joked about. All of it was gone. One night, I got a call from Jared. He'd heard through mutual friends that Chloe was still attending parties, though she'd toned down her antics since the fallout. Man, I hate to say it, he began, but I think she's more worried about her reputation than losing you. That hit hard. I'd been holding on to the idea that maybe she was genuinely remorseful, that her tears weren't just for show. But if she cared more about appearances than our marriage, what was left to fight for? I wasn't ready to confront her fully yet, but I knew the time was coming. Every day, I felt the anger simmering beneath the surface, waiting to boil over. And when it did, I wanted to make sure I had the upper hand. I started meeting with a divorce lawyer, laying the groundwork for what would inevitably come next. Chloe still lived in our house, though we barely spoke. She spent her days trying to mend fences, cleaning obsessively, cooking meals she knew I wouldn't eat. It was like she thought she could erase the past with chores and kindness. But the trust was gone, and I couldn't see a way back. For now, I'm just trying to survive. Each day feels like a battle between the part of me that wants revenge and the part that wants peace. I haven't decided which one will win. Weeks of silence and avoidance turned into a cold war between Chloe and me. Every glance felt like a challenge, every word like a minefield. But underneath it all, my anger was building. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about the arrogance of her thinking she could brush it all away with tears and a clean house. That night, I decided I'd had enough. I couldn't carry the weight of her betrayal any longer, nor the charade of pretending we could find some way back. She deserved to feel, even for a moment, the humiliation she'd inflicted on me. I called her to the living room, where I'd laid out a collection of printed photos and screenshots, messages between her and the men, images from that night at the party, and even a few things I'd pieced together from Jared's information. Her face went pale as she stepped into the room. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "This," I said, my voice calm but cold, "is the truth you didn't think I'd ever find out." Her hands shook as she picked up one of the photos. I can explain." "No, Chloe," I snapped. "You don't get to explain. You've already done enough talking. Now you're going to listen." I laid it all out. The months of deceit, the blatant disrespect, and the complete disregard for everything we'd built together. She tried to interrupt, but I cut her off every time. When I was done, I stood there, waiting for her response. She crumbled into sobs, falling to her knees. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to fix this." But I didn't feel satisfaction. Her tears meant nothing to me now. The woman I once loved was gone, replaced by someone I couldn't recognize. "I've already started the divorce process," I said, watching the words hit her like a blow. "You'll be served soon." Her sobs turned to begging, but I was already walking away. I grabbed my car keys and left the house, leaving her to face the reality of what she destroyed. That night, I didn't go to a bar or a friend's house. I went to a hotel, the same one I'd stayed at after I first discovered her betrayal. This time, though, I wasn't a broken man running away from the truth. I was someone reclaiming his life. I'd spent weeks letting anger consume me, but now it felt like I could finally start moving forward. The revenge wasn't in yelling or fighting. It was in walking away with my dignity intact. Chloe would have to live with the fallout of her choices, but I wouldn't let her drag me down any further. The next morning, I met with my lawyer to finalize the paperwork. Chloe would get a fair settlement. Nothing more, nothing less. I wouldn't stoop to petty games or vindictive tactics. My focus was on starting over, no matter how difficult it would be. As I packed my things over the following days, Chloe's behavior became erratic. She alternated between begging me to stay and lashing out, accusing me of being cruel for leaving. But her words no longer had power over me. I'd made my decision, and there was no turning back. The day I handed her the finalized divorce papers, she broke down completely. "I don't know how to live without you," she sobbed. "You should have thought about that before you chose them over us," I said simply, before walking out the door for the last time. The divorce dragged on longer than I'd hoped, and the process drained me emotionally and financially. But when it was finally over, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The life I'd known was gone, but so was the toxic weight of staying with someone who didn't respect me. Rebuilding my life hasn't been easy. There are days when I still feel the sting of betrayal, and nights when the loneliness feels unbearable. But I'm learning to find peace in the small victories: a new job, a new apartment, and the freedom to decide what comes next. Looking back, I realized the biggest betrayal wasn't Chloe's actions. It was the lie I told myself for so long, that we were happy, that we were unbreakable. Now, I'm finally learning to be honest with myself, even when it hurts. Goodbye.